This is the Brew World Order Podcast.
Welcome to the Brew World Order Podcast. My name is Mike Curtin. If you haven't subscribed yet, well, you must feel left out because everybody's doing it. This is episode number 58. In this episode, I sit down with Garrett Chambers of Cushwa Brewing Company in Williamsport, Maryland. Garrett tells me how they came up with the name for their brewery, how he feels the industry has changed in the last 5 years, and tells us how the brewery adapted to the shutdowns that were put in place due to COVID. I feel their pain because right now I'm trying to adapt because I feel like I have COVID. I'm not kidding either. I feel really horrible right now. And I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but it's not very pleasant. Luckily, I did this interview with Garrett when I wasn't feeling like poo. So, sit back, crack open a beer, or have a little bit of tea if you'd like, and enjoy the podcast. Cheers. Garrett Chambers, Marcus Thomas, and Scott Coleman all grew up in Maryland. After high school, Garrett wound up working on cars for a while before going to college for finance. That led him to Houston, where he worked in the investment industry for almost 6 years. When his father suddenly passed, Garrett decided to move back to Maryland. While he was back home, he started teaching Spanish, while also going to school to get a master's in school counseling. After that, he started a job as a counselor in Maryland until him and his family made the move to Vermont, where he continued to do the same work, but also worked at a brewery in his spare time. Scott and Marcus, who had stayed friends with Garrett over the years, still lived in Maryland and continued homebrewing together since Garrett left. The president of the Brewers Association in Maryland at the time, Kevin Addix, had been asked to come to the town of Williamsport so he can have a discussion with some people who might be interested in opening a brewery in that area. Scott and Marcus just happened to be at that very meeting, and when they left, they passed by a commercial building that they thought would be perfect for the brewery. They reached out to Garrett with their plan for a brewery and asked him to decide if he wanted in on very short notice. The morning of the deadline, Garrett called them back with his answer, and in January of 2016, the three opened their doors to the public as Cushwa Brewing Company. And Garrett Chambers is here with me today. Garrett, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. So I had looked up Cushwa in the dictionary, and it's not in there. You care to tell us how you came up with the name for your brewery?
That's a good question. So it's we are in Williamsport, Maryland, which is kind of attached to Hagerstown, about an hour and a half, like northwest of DC or west of Baltimore, and we're a canal town, so the Cushwa Basin is an important historical part of the town, because when the canal, this is the C&O Canal, when it was functional, it's very long and narrow, and you can't really turn boats around in the canal. So they would put boats could drop things off or pick things up and turn around and kind of maneuver things a little bit. So Cushwa Basin was an important part of our town historically. Williamsport is a town that George Washington considered making the capital before DC was chosen.
Okay.
Which is, kind of interesting historically.
Yeah, absolutely.
We wanted a name that, was more serious and less goofy. And we had a name picked out. We actually registered our business as our legal business name. And we're moving forward with some stuff, and then found out that there was another brewery out there that had a beer series under that name. So
okay.
Totally on us because we didn't do the research that we should have. But we sat down one day and gave ourselves an hour. After months of working all that stuff out, gave ourselves about an hour to pick a name. And Cushwa was hyper local and had some recognition here in the state, so we ended up with that.
Sounds good enough for me. I know that you, Scott and Marcus, opened the brewery together. They had been brewing together for a while before you had basically joined in with them, and before that you were kind of just craft beer buddies, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
Right.
They went to high school together, so they had known each other for a long time, and we met through craft beer. But they homebrewed. They had a little group of guys that would brew together.
Right.
We never brewed together until after we started the business. I homebrewed. I also worked at a brewery up in Vermont called Four Quarters for a little while.
Okay.
Got some production experience. It was kind of Brian's place at that point. He was the business was fairly young, so it was kind of like work tap room, help brew, help clean, just whatever needed to be done. So
Right.
I actually learned a lot through that, and moved home to do this with these guys.
Right. So at what point was it when it was kind of that aha moment that hit you where all of you were like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to open a brewery.
They kind of knew it before I did. They were pretty serious about the concept for a while and had been, talking about some startup things and scouting locations and, contemplating locations. And they went to the Brewers Association of Maryland put on an informal discussion in our county one night, and they went to just kind of listen to hear what they had to say. And on the way home from that, they found our first location. It was the first place that they had, actually contacted, someone to see the facility and everything. So they picked the spot and were very serious about it. They got in touch with me, and offered me the opportunity to come down, go into business with them. And at first I was kind of hesitant just because I wasn't sure that I wanted to move back to Maryland. I grew up here and I love it, but Vermont's pretty awesome, and we were fairly established in Burlington, so it took a little time for me to decide. And at some point, they just kind of gave me an ultimatum because I think I was kicking the can down the road, and they're like, "Listen, dude, if you want to be a part of this, you need to figure it out.
Right.
We need to know by tomorrow morning," type thing. So, it's funny because I woke up that morning and didn't really know what I was going to do, and just decided to do it on a whim. And luckily it's panned out okay.
Right. Yeah, it seems so. And you opened in January of 2017, correct?
Yes.
2017. So you were open for about
5.
Right. So you were open for about a good 3 years before all these COVID shutdowns started happening. How did you go about adjusting to all that, and how did that look like for you?
So we were in the middle of building out our expanded space when the shutdown happened, and it forced us to close down our old space, which we weren't ready to do, and not have any space for a little while because the new space wasn't completely ready. So what really saved us was we were fortunate to get our canning line started up about 2 weeks before the actual shutdown happened.
Right.
And so we just scrambled and moved everything to package immediately. And being able to, we get a lot of local support. We had a lot of people coming, stopping off. We're right off of I-81, stopping in to buy beer on the way to and from places. So we got a lot of support, and we're able to sell a lot of packaged beer to keep us afloat until we finally got our location open, and then we were allowed to open it. So it was, our part of that story. The scary part for us was we didn't really have an open brewery for a little while.
Right.
An open tap room, I guess you could say.
Right. And during the process when you first opened in January of 2017, from the start when you guys first came up with that moment, like, hey, let's open, to the moment you actually opened your doors, what do you think was the most challenging part for you?
Good question. None of us had ever owned a business before, and
right.
we're all fairly educated and experienced in different ways, but being a business owner and knowing, studying business or whatever are two very different things. So I think it was just, obviously you go into it knowing that you're going to work hard and be committed and all those things. But for us specifically, because we started our place with, our money, and we didn't take out loans, and we didn't have investors, and we did all the build out and all the install of the equipment taxing, but it was a shock to the system because you just didn't know what was coming, and we tried to just get through, and we did, but it was a lot more. We bit off more than what we thought we were, for sure.
Gotcha. And how did you guys go about funding your business?
Savings. But in saying that, we started our place for less than almost everybody I know, and that was, again, it was because we did. I grew up doing construction. Scott is an engineer. Marcus worked in manufacturing facilities, so all of us had some background to actually come in and piece it together. So it was, we went into what we didn't have in capital. We just, worked in sweat equity, basically.
Gotcha. And what do you think one of the hardest adjustments you had to make personally while owning this business?
That's a good question. I think just lack of time with our families. We all have families, and just being kind of like knowing that you're doing the right thing long term for you and your family, but then making those short term sacrifices that kids don't understand, and
of course
spouses may not love in that moment, and like parents are like, why aren't you here on the holiday, or like those types of things. That was definitely, I think, one of the things that we struggle with frequently.
For sure. Yeah, balancing family and business is, I'm sure, a very tough thing. And what are some qualities that you possess that make you a good business owner?
Tenacity, I guess. The complete unwillingness to fail. Overall, I mean, we definitely screw stuff up. We definitely make mistakes and things like that. But I think that for all three of us, we're hyper committed to this, and we're all competitive in our own ways, and we just kind of hold ourselves to a really high standard. So I would think being tenacious is part of it. Also having a genuine love for what we do, and caring about quality, trying to put quality first, and above financials and other things that may come into play. Persevering through some of our weaker decisions, and trying to just keep our eyes on what the actual goal is, and not to sound too cheesy, but actually caring about the product that we produce, caring about our customers and our employees, and putting those people first.
Right, for sure. I'm sure you've come across many people in the beer industry now, coming up on 5 years. Besides obviously the people you work with, who do you think's inspired you the most in the beer industry?
That's a good question. I think that some of the people that started off, a long time ago, through the end of the first kind of wave of craft beer. So your Ken Grossman's in Sierra Nevada, and through John Trogner that owns Trogs, place people like that when they started what they have built, when they started their business, there wasn't even a market for this. They created the market for and paved the way for what we do. So while what we did was a gamble, it wasn't anywhere near the type of gamble that those guys took. Because they not only didn't have a market, there wasn't equipment to buy, there wasn't there wasn't a road. And there's a bunch of those people that fit that mold. The Allagash, the Oscar Blues, those businesses overall, just the way that they started so small and worked so hard, and have become what they've become. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't be where we are. But it also, again, not that it was easy, but our road was way easier. Right. There were suppliers for us. There were customers for us, and things. So
Right. So the people that paved the way for everybody. Yeah. Did you ever experience a moment of success where you kind of just like stood back and be like, wow, we're doing really well, or we made it? What do you think would be like
one of the biggest,
the first one or the biggest one for you?
Yeah, the craft beer industry has, there are so many breweries and there's so much beer out there. And one of the ways that some breweries have kind of used to stand out or differentiate themselves is you have these kind of like higher level beer festivals that are like an invite type thing where breweries that are well known invite you to come pour at their anniversary parties and stuff. We got invited to pour at Aslan's. I want to say it was their fourth anniversary. It would have been 3 years ago. Those guys, they started off on a 2-barrel system. I believe it was 2 barrels, kind of in the back of this like business park or whatever, and have gone ape and have totally blown up. But the day we got invited to that festival, and the night before was a bottle share where other brewers and the brewery owners and other people that work at these places, we get together and have these bottle shares. Everyone brings, kind of like show what you know and bring all your cool stuff out. And, we're sitting in this restaurant basically that they had rented out. And there were all these people in a room that we knew their names, we knew their breweries, we knew their beer. And it was kind of like a fanboy moment, where it's like, holy shit, I can't believe that we're like in this room with these people. And, we're going to pour beer with them. And we, people were interested in like talking to us, and like, some people actually knew our brand and things. And like, I think for all of us, it was like kind of just sitting there looking around being like, holy hell, how did we get here?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure. I'm sure things get a little hectic at some points, and things just happen to come real fast at you. But is there a moment ever when you feel like you need a mental break from everything? And what's the importance of that for you, and what does that look like?
Yeah, a lot. So we all have our own, the three of us are, we have a lot of similar qualities. We have a lot, we're all different at the same time. So we have our own things. Like 3 years ago, after like killing myself for 2 years, I just like had my own like internal breakdown, and I hadn't taken time off and like nothing, I was like stuck at work all the time, and I needed to like get perspective. And I'm a traveler kind of by nature, so I went to Brussels for a week by myself.
Right.
I just like booked a plane ticket and like left 2 weeks later, and like,
awesome.
It was very much like friends and family, like this is what I'm doing, and I'm going by myself, and I've got to have this, this break, get some perspective, and just basically unwind a little bit. So that's kind of how I did mine. Scott did one where he flew out to the West Coast. He's a big golf guy, so he was able to take a week and head out and play some really cool golf courses and stuff. So we've once we were able to step away, I think you could kind of feel that coming, but we hadn't had time off, and that's kind of how we did it. Now we're able to take time off a little more than we were.
Right, I'm sure.
In those moments, it was like, if I don't do this, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah, right. You say you're coming up on 5 years. What do you think's been the biggest change in the industry for you in the last 5 years?
I think the acceleration of the what's new crowd. When we started, 5 years changes a lot.
Right.
This industry is like moves at warp speed, it feels like. And when we started, we were really hyper focused on New England IPAs and things because that's what we liked and that's what we we're fairly good at. And that was kind of enough to really set you apart, especially in an area that didn't have options for that. When we moved down, or when we started this in Maryland, there was kind of sort of some people doing it, but we I feel like a pretty good handle on it, and that we did really well. And that was kind of enough of a hook to get people, interested and excited and things like that. But man, within the last 5 years, like, double IPAs have gone to triple IPAs,
Right.
like lightly fruited kettle sours have gone to, beer that's, barely beer, and, heavily fruited isn't even, enough of a descriptor of what things have become. And, I think in some way, shape, or form, we've kind of done it to ourselves a little bit, but, there's a lot of like the consumer demand for the new thing. So it's,
Of course, right.
it's, we put ourselves in a spot where it's creative fatigue to come up with new things a lot. So it's trying to fulfill that, and be that, but also try to turn out quality things and not just like throw a bunch of ingredients at something and say, here it is, and I hope that works. But
Right.
trying to like maintain quality while also fulfilling the what's new demand that's out there.
Gotcha. This is my favorite question that I ask. What was your gateway beer into the craft beer world?
So there used to be, it's not even around anymore. There was a beer called Pete's Wicked.
Pete's Wicked. Okay.
Yeah. Are you familiar with it?
I've seen it before. Yes.
It was a thing that I used to get people to get it for me, and like it wasn't around very often, but it was, it was the first beer that I ever drank that wasn't macro lager. And this, I'm 42, so I mean, this is when I was maybe a year or two before I should have been drinking alcohol at all. Not that I condone that, but it happened. And so at that point, it was like, oh my God, like this is so drastically different, and it was. I mean, in today's standards, it wasn't crazy at all. I think it was like a hoppy brown or a hoppy amber ale or something like that. I don't even know what style it was, but it was, it was bitter and it was flavorful, and it was just different. So, after that, when I started to travel more frequently, I got lucky and did did a study abroad trip in Germany when I was 21, and after that, like being able to travel around Europe and drink German beer and Belgian things, after that it was kind of like full on, and it's just become it's a lifestyle. Honestly,
Right.
I knew that like I had a passion for drinking this stuff and learning about the history and meeting people in the industry and things, but I didn't at that point realize that I would ever brew beer.
Right. I just looked it up right now. It was a brown ale.
There you go.
I remember it like it was yesterday, man. I remember seeing that everywhere. They don't make that anymore. That's right. It's funny you say that.
Yeah, they either sold or went out of business. I don't
Right.
really remember exactly what happened with it, but that's the first one that I tried. And then of course at that point, like there was Sam Adams. That's Sam Adams has a pretty wide portfolio.
Right.
Like I said earlier, like Sierra Nevada pops up, and then you find out that there were other things out there. It's just you didn't really know about it.
Of course, yeah. What's next for your brewery? What does the future look like for Cushwa?
Right now, trying to focus on making this business last. I think for the first until the last 6 months or a year, we were a startup, and it was very much the focus was just don't fail. You just work really hard,
Right.
do the best you can, and don't fail. And now that we've fingers crossed, kind of crossed, like we've jumped that hurdle, and like I wouldn't really call us a startup anymore, but now it's kind of running the business more strategically, but also not turning it into a machine, and continuing to be creative and growing at a reasonable pace, and really kind of figuring out what we want this place to be and sticking to it so it doesn't get out of hand. We still have a relatively small crew, and I think the capacity that we have here, as far as like how much we can brew, the volume we can push, is right around where we want to be. There could be a second location in the future at some point. I don't know that. We've tossed the idea around. Just trying to like make sure that this place does, is healthy financially, and that, like I said before, like our employees are happy and customers are happy and everybody's having a good experience and doing the right thing. Just making sure that there's longevity in this, to go as long as we want it to.
Right. Yeah. And if somebody came to you and asked you for advice on opening their own brewery, what would you tell them?
I don't know. Right now, I'd be like, maybe wait.
Right.
Let this industry air out a little bit, just because I think we've seen a lot of changes. I think there's some, potentially some other things that are coming our way on a macroeconomic scale. And some, we're still there's a lot of unknowns. We still have supply chain shortages. Equipment is not easy to get. Employees are not easy to find. Not to be like doomsday guy, because it's not that at all. But I think it would be prudent to maybe just kind of hold tight and see how things go. But if they were absolutely positively doing it and they were just gonna get after it, I think now more than ever is to make sure that you have a very defined purpose and brand. You know who you are, you know what you're doing, who your customer base is, have a plan. And even if that plan doesn't necessarily play out in the same way that you think it will, there's value in the planning stage, and just kind of don't wing it. Like, know what you're doing. Meet as many people in the industry as you can, get various opinions from, other brewery owners to ingredient equipment suppliers to people in the sales chain that, may one day sell your beer. Just kind of be a sponge and take as much information as possible.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I have a little segment called Quick Fire 5. 5 quick questions, beer related. You ready?
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Shoot.
Somebody comes into your brewery. What's one of the beers on tap you'd recommend they try?
We just brewed a Dortmunder lager called Starting Over, and I think that a good measure of a brewer's skill set is clean beer that things can't hide in, and I'm really proud of that. So I think
Nice.
I think it would be that one.
All right. If you could collaborate with any of the brewery on a beer, who would it be?
I would like to brew with Triple Crossing out of Richmond, Virginia, on probably a big stout, because I think they make some of the best, most balanced out there, even though that may not necessarily be the thing that they're known the most for. I think they kill it. And I think, they're definitely a top 5 brewery for me. And anytime I'm down that way, I always try to stop in and
Gotcha.
spend time there.
Favorite style of beer?
Pale ales.
Pale ale.
Because they're low in alcohol, obviously plenty of hops, and, just very drinkable.
Gotcha. Last beer you drank that blew you away?
Czech Pils from Divine Barrel out of Charlotte, North Carolina. It was, I think, one of the best versions of that style that I've ever had, made in the States. And they're awesome at what they do. I don't think I've ever had any of their lagers until that. And when he brought it up, I was floored at how spot on it is for the style, and
Right.
How delicious it was.
Gotcha. And you have 1 keg of beer to hold you over for a 2-week quarantine. Which beer are you choosing?
Saison DuPont, which is not, you don't find a lot of kegs of it. It's more a bottle, but it does come in that. But that's kind of like my desert island beer or whatever. Like if I could only ever drink one beer, that's something that I've loved since I had it, and I would have that.
All right. Well, Garrett, that's all I got for you, man.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you having us on, and if there's anything else I can answer, any follow up, please let me know.
Absolutely, man. I'm Mike Hurton for the Brew World Order podcast, here with Garrett Chambers of Cushwa Brewing Company in Williamsport, Maryland. Thank you, man.
All right, thank you very much.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to my interview with Garrett Chambers of Cushwa Brewing Company in Williamsport, Maryland. Whether you're passing through, you live in the area, or just visiting a friend nearby, definitely check them out. Also, give them a follow on social media while you're at it. Every other Sunday, I'll be releasing new episodes, so subscribe and you'll never miss one. Also, give us a follow on social media. Why? Because I'm desperate here. I'm Mike Curtin for the Brew World Order podcast. You stay safe out there.